see the full.
That meeting's on your calendar, so you all should have that information. I think I said a few up here in this, in the first floor conference room. So that, and then you'll meet with Wes immediately after that. He's gonna give you a little update on his views of the organization, the organizational structure, and also give you an update on projects that he's been working on and just, you know, in general, what he's been doing for the town of Windsor since his contract was put in place.
Cause I have 9 to 11,
Mm-hmm.
is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, Drew thinks Drew thinks it'll just be like 9 to 10 or 10:30, and then.
That night
And then that night, we will have a regular work session,
at 5:30,
yes.
that's what I had down anyway.
So the meeting with Drew, is that executive session then?
No, I'll post it, but since it's during the day and all, I mean, it's,
We could get the one with Wes as an executive session, because it didn't lend itself to
Right.
the kind of content.
So, I guess, cause I know we were having that conversation about the applicants' names aren't public until they're official finalists,
Mhm.
and so it'll be a posted public meeting, but it's not gonna be televised or?
right.
Okay. So if someone happened to decide to come to it, they would,
It's just a work session.
Okay.
And
We can
that's
decide.
the best we could do. Ian and I talked about it long and hard, trying to figure out how to make it work, but since it was during the day, we felt, you know, we'll go through our normal processes for that. And I don't know if there's anything else right off.
Well, the work session that night looks like it's going to be on road improvement update.
Yep.
From Scott, with maybe a little bit of a housing report, or just a,
We actually replaced the housing item
Yep.
with the road impact,
Okay.
improvement.
So
okay,
I'm trying to get Johnny Olson to come in,
okay.
because to get an update from him before, I understand he's retiring and things like that, so, I haven't received a response back yet, but I thought, you know, it's roads, if we could do it all in one night, so be it, and as we talk tonight, if there's other things if there's something else that we wanna put on that agenda, we certainly can. Since it is just, it's a single night, there's no work session, or no meeting, no regular meeting afterwards, but because you will be holding a work session earlier in the day, I didn't wanna overload you with too much for the day. And we have the town manager candidate meet and greet set up for the 19th for that evening, out of the public works facility. We'll have it catered, just light hors d'oeuvres, and bring in some, you know, high top tables and low tables, and work on press releases and getting the information out once you guys meet with Drew and kind of have a selection of finalists, and those people are notified and accept, and we'll probably go ahead and most municipalities include that information in their press release, and along with the short bio of the candidate, so they have an idea of who that is. But
Is that the day we'll be doing the lunch?
Yes.
So we'll be doing the lunch,
Well, you can do the lunch, whatever, you can do the 19th or the 20th, you guys can talk to.
I think it's probably better on the 19th,
Okay.
because depending on how many candidates we have on that Tuesday, we might be. So I think the 19th,
Mhm.
with department heads, that will be where it's done in where the person, the candidate will move from table to table, is what will happen there. So that in the course of the lunch hour, every table will have had an opportunity to sit with every candidate.
Sure. Do you want us to reach out to any other community stakeholders to be part of that luncheon, or do you guys wanna think about it, and you can let me know after March 5th?
I think we were mainly keeping,
about it, but yeah, we hadn't.
yeah.
Because
don't
I
know
know
if
like when we
actually
did
know
the police chief ones, and I know when we did Stacy's interviews, the luncheon there were some community stakeholders that were involved, like the chamber, we had some developers in, we had, trying to think, school district was involved, library district.
But we're also involving them all in the meet and greet that night.
Right, they are, yeah, we did both for Stacy and for Rick as well. So it's whatever you guys want, I mean, I will make whatever happen. that you
Well,
want.
the ones you just mentioned, we did talk about that, so.
Yeah, we talked about it, but I
Fire,
don't know. if we-
fire and
Mhm.
library and that kind, you know, the ones that we work with
Yeah.
in partnership, but.
Well, and they will have, so when I understood from Drew called me the other day after he had talked with Mayor Melendez,
Mhm.
and the night of the meet and greet, we'll have comment cards put together for the various candidates, and people will submit those, and I've given that responsibility to HR, so they will create the cards, take care of collecting them, and then turning them around with the comments the next day for you all, so you have that bright and early, so you can start some of that decision-making and deliberating.
And do we have a firm time for the open house that night?
We've got it reserved like from 5 to 7, the Public Works facility, you know, we thought that way we could hit even those that, you know, maybe are just picking up their kids from school or something like that, I don't know. But it is set from 5 to 7, but we can change that 5:30 to 7:30 or something like that. 2 hours seems to be plenty long enough for those. But
On the
5 to
9th
7.
and
Hmm?
19th.
On the
Right.
19th, yes. We've got it set for 5 to 7 for now.
So can I request clarification on, is there a midday affair at which I will be
It
expected?
sounds like there is on the 19th. I
On the
know.
19th of lunch, definitely.
I know, I don't think you're gonna be here.
I'm flying in from out of town that
Oh,
morning. I expect to be back in town hall by 2, so I may send the assistant town
Sure.
attorney to cover for me if she's available.
Okay, yeah, well.
Speed of the plane.
part of who and how many we have is gonna depend on what the number of candidates we narrow down to.
Yeah,
If we
that's
only
what-
have 3,
Then it's,
you know,
yeah,
that's
so be it.
kinda different than if we
Right.
decide we want 5 or 6.
Yeah. just, we can make those decisions after the 5th.
Mhm.
Not a huge deal. And I forget, we had talked about location, Christie, but I did not really think, I don't know if we talked location or not
Well,
about
we
that
need kind of a
particular luncheon.
private, we might have, and the one place that we had the before, they don't have that
They don't have
anymore.
that anymore. Yeah,
So I'm
Bob?
thinking maybe that banquet room that Pelican has
Mhm.
right there, you know, that you can, that they
Yeah.
could set up about 5, 4 tables.
Okay.
'Cause even I don't think any of our local restaurants have a private,
No.
so that's
They really
probably,
don't.
I mean, that probably Pelican's the only one.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
And I think we just had a buffet. Did we just have a buffet
Yes,
set up?
yes.
Everybody went and got what they wanted?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
For both Stacy and me. I will see what we can pull together.
What else? Wednesday, I don't know how many of you plan to be involved in Youth and Government Day. I'll be here that morning. I was gonna plan to be part of the lunch, but I will be attending a funeral that starts at 10:30. So I'm not sure I'll be back in time for the lunch.
I'll be here for it.
Cool. Lunch
As
will
long
be,
as there's 2 people, because there's 2 different places
Yes.
they'll be having lunch in case they have like questions or I don't know, whatever.
Kelly's put together some really nice bags for them too. You'll be able to see those, Christie, when you come in on Wednesday. We'll be handing them out as they come in, but really nice bags with some fun stuff in it. Okay.
What time is that starting on Wednesday?
I had 11.
Your
11 for
lunch,
the lunch.
yeah, the lunch is 11.
I'm kicking them, they're coming in at 8 and, I'm doing the welcome at 8:30.
8 to 10:30 in the lunch.
That's it. Correct.
Okay. I think that's kind of all I have in terms of getting everybody kind of caught up to date. But
When do we do our deliberations or for the town manager?
well, Matt, if we do the interviews that Tuesday,
Okay.
he said it's gonna depend on how many we have, whether they're gonna be, he said something about either 70-minute, there'll be 70-minute intervals or like 40-minute. So there won't be time probably, I don't think maybe in between, we'll have to have some kind of a
Break.
system set up and then that afternoon or evening, whenever we get done, I would anticipate we will
Did you
be
have
having.
the chamber?
We have the chamber candidate forum that night at 6, so we can't go
6 to
too
8.
late.
Oh,
Yeah, I sent that information
Yeah.
here, so he's aware of it. I did let him know that there was a time
So
concern.
if we, yeah, if there's not a clear or quick choice, we may have to quickly decide what the next
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
plan is or the meeting time, probably.
Yep, yep, yep.
Because we
You'll
don't
know
want
more
anybody
after the
to be
5th
late for that, yeah.
and see who's still available.
We're talking about a Wednesday. This Wednesday, February 20.
No, we're talking about when we actually will do the interviews,
March
Ivan,
20th.
which is on the 20th.
Can we put some dates with this conversation?
So March 19th and 20th are pretty much absorbed with,
It'll be kind of full day, all day.
Mhm.
yeah. And it's all gonna depend on, I guess, how many we have and
Yep.
the length of questions and all that we'll go over with Drew
Drew.
on Monday.
He'll do good for you. He'll set you out pretty good. They are also doing the recruitment for the Loveland DDA Executive Director.
And the
Saw that.
Loveland City Attorney.
Yep, and they're doing both. Staying busy up north.
Have we heard how many, what the final count was of applicants?
66.
I was gonna say it was right under 70.
Yeah, I think he said 66 is when he, I believe that's what he said.
And he was anticipating a couple of late ones, so we might
Was
have
he?
got too close to, when I last talked to
Yeah.
him, he was thinking 68, 69.
Awesome. Yep. And there should be somebody in there that belongs in Windsor.
Absolutely.
So. Okay. Are we ready to get started?
Well, Wednesday-
Miles, you have some?
I do have something. I got an email from a constituent about a noise ordinance, and he was proposing that we adopt something similar or the same as Weld County. So I forwarded it on to Mr. McCarthy, so I didn't know if that was interesting on a work session or not in the future.
Noise
So it's, our code says that unreasonable noise is prohibited, but it doesn't define what that is. There's no metric for that.
ordinance.
So I think as I recall, what Miles sent to me was more driven toward measuring it with a meter. And that we need to figure out a way to measure sound and from what point to what point, and to make a decision about what kind of sound is okay and what is not okay, and then equip law enforcement with the tools to measure it and enforce it. So, and back in the day when this has come up before, the technology for measuring noise has improved, and it's, I would expect, a little cheaper than it was before, but you still need, legally, we still need to have some foundation laid for it to be accepted as evidence in court if we ever needed to enforce it. But that's all doable if you want to adopt a standard that is more metric than not.
Well, I think we actually had, or I remember at least having some conversation about this, or maybe it was at CML with a whole bunch of other folks in the room. And a lot of folks don't usually go down that path because it puts an undue burden on your police department, first of all, because anybody can, and it's somewhat suggestive a little bit unless you have exact measuring tools, and then I think you have to say, how many of us are hearing, these complaints, and what are the complaints, and is there another way, do we already have some metric in place that handles or manages that, so.
Well, that's where I would go to chief and ask what the metric is, or how do we define
Very
that?
subjective, it sounds like.
Is it subjective, is it?
Right now, it's subjective. Yeah, so it's, whatever's unreasonable, and it's,
I know we've talked about the dog barking, like they gotta be there and witness it for so long, or,
that's for 10 minutes for an anonymous complaint. For a known complaint, there is no prescribed time limit per se. They establish the unreasonableness in court as to, for testimony. So
Was there a
Yeah.
specific, I'm sorry,
they have to describe it.
was there a specific case that the constituent was concerned about?
I think there was, he didn't tell me what it was, and I can't find his email. It's older than what's on my. It was, he said though that it would be, I thought he said it would be taken care of by the time this actually got approved, if it did, but he was still interested in having, that was a good idea.
Most of the complaints we get tend to generate around construction projects are taken off. Places in the summertime will get complaints on like universal forest products because of their operations at night. OI has generated complaints in the past. That's the one time I recall that we actually worked with the county and a decibel to read noise levels, but actually it was the county took care of it because it was their noise levels, their issue on that side, so.
So if Weld County already has a measurable type ordinance, we can use that in Windsor on the Weld County side, as is?
You could use it in Windsor as your own model within Windsor. I mean,
Well, I just
think
meant
it-
without us adopting anything.
Right.
We could enforce it through the Weld County
No,
Commission?
Outside,
No?
outside of municipal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's county, so if you wanted to adopt something that looks like the county ordinance for Windsor, you could. That's-
I'd be inclined right now to not go down that path. I think less government and intrusive is better. And I don't think you ever create or study something unless you are very seriously thinking you're gonna adopt it. Because I know our staff, they go to a lot of time and trouble to pull all this multitude of information and for us to have a conversation, and unless we are pretty serious or we think we ought to have one, I don't even think we should go down that path and study it unless all of a sudden, I don't know, we get a whole bunch more calls or, folks are complaining or whatever.
What about like fracking noise, is that monitored by the COGCC or something like that, or, I mean, I'm just throwing out a big one that sometimes we.
Yeah, the COGCC has adopted noise standards and they would enforce those.
So that's not our local and law enforcement that goes, okay.
And the county ordinance, as I recall, exempts certain activity, oil and gas is one of them, as you might imagine.
There are ordinance or state standards for noise, and it's a myriad of levels and locations, and there are a number of exemptions for it, so.
Okay.
Speaking of citizen issues, I'm assuming everyone got the one that Samantha sent in regarding the rec center shuttle for seniors. Do we know, have anybody responded to her?
I have not yet.
And I didn't know, because I didn't know an answer, but she was basically talking about she's not
Well,
technically.
I don't know that she asked, she just said, hey,
Yeah,
this
it
is
didn't-
something to think about. It wasn't,
It wasn't
hey,
like a
get back with
question,
me.
so I hadn't,
Yeah.
Well,
I just haven't responded yet,
My
but-
question was, as it stands, can a disabled, even if they're not legally disabled, could a disabled person who's unable to drive, do they have access to the shuttle, or is that strictly seniors?
It's set up strictly for seniors as we sit today.
Okay.
I think as we start talking about transportation and those types of things, I think that's part of that larger discussion of,
Right.
the mobility for our residents and what role we play in that.
Because I think you have to be really important, couple of things. I think all of whatever people suggest and write to us, it's important, right? We need to be responsive in some way, shape, or form. But we can't also always let every person who comes to us with one thing that we have to, that's the thing I've been telling all the kids in the schools this week is we can't solve everybody's problems. We can't create the solutions for everybody. We have to do what's in the best interest and the good for the community as a whole.
Right,
And
my
s-
thought was just if that was something already available and she just wasn't aware that would be a very simple, like, hey, you can use that.
But I think there are programs for what her needs and requests are, but I'm not
I
in
don't know either. I'll have to look
that
it up.
human services element, or I don't think we have anybody in our community. I think that's more of a Weld County
Mhm.
or Larimer County, whatever side she sits on, that might be able to help her with that as well.
Well, Patty, I'd be happy to kind of do some research with what resources the county might offer and
Well,
respond
we
to
can,
it.
and I have,
I
there's,
think there's some.
I think that there's something,
Yeah.
I'll have to check with the front desk staff, because they field questions like that all the time, so I think they probably have the information. I just haven't had a chance to get to it, but I'll make sure to take care of it
Okay.
tomorrow.
I know you've got
No
more
worries.
pressing things.
So are we not gonna do the work session on the noise ordinance? I didn't see if anyone else.
I'm not interested in doing that right now, because I don't think it would go everywhere, and I mean, I've gotten some of those complaints in the past, but they don't come up very often. And they're usually fixed as soon as the issue is completed or done or whatever, and
Was she wanting transportation around Windsor or between municipalities? Because we just talked about the Greeley transit.
that were jump squirrel.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay, it's
Whatever.
okay, it's all good.
On the noise thing though, my understanding is if a
Back some more.
person has a concern about noise, they would call the police,
Yes,
and then the language is unreasonable,
yes.
and that's a judgment called by the police officer. Right,
Oh, yes.
okay, gotcha.
Because
So
my
if
thought-
someone is doing something next door to your house and, making a lot of noise, the police officer could approach them and say, hey, could you tone it down?
We normally try to
Yeah.
deal with, through civility.
Right.
And then,
Gotcha.
now, we did pass one ordinance a while back in reference to noise, and that had to do with trash trucks. We created hours of operation for those.
When I first started.
Waste management ones are the worst, because they beep the whole way through the whole neighborhood.
Every single day in our neighborhood, it's a different, what we try to coordinate.
I mean, my thought would be, I'd wanna know more from them, if there's some specific thing that's not
Yeah, I can
addressed
forward you
through
an
Yeah.
email.
Yeah, if there's some,
Yeah, I thought if we had a work session, I'd invite him in and see it, but, I mean, if that's not delicious, then.
so right now it's on a case-by-case basis by the police department,
Yeah.
on whatever's determined to be
And I guess I'd
reasonable
want-
or unreasonable noise.
I wanna know why they feel like that isn't sufficient
Yeah.
Yeah.
before I wanna necessarily dedicate a whole work session to it.
What you guys were talking about was the quiet hours?
For trash.
Oh, for trash. Do we have standard quiet hours, like me having a barbecue in my backyard and playing music and it's after 10 o'clock, it's a problem, but before 10, it's not, or? No, there's not any, okay.
But I
Just
bet
what
some of
is
that kind of goes
reasonable?
into the reasonable of,
Yeah.
you know,
Later it
if
is
you're out there
before
with your chainsaw at 3 in the afternoon.
I have an understanding with all my neighbors,
That
right,
may
Dennis?
be reasonable,
Oh,
at
wait,
3
you only-
AM, not so reasonable.
Depends on the neighborhood.
Well, and I guess that's my hesitation to avoid. it.
Okay, we
Scott?
got lots of
Yeah.
big topics that we
All right.
gotta discuss tonight, so I think that, this other one, you can forward some additional information if we find out more and wish, then we can move forward with that. So, the goal of the work session is to have the town board receive information on topics of town business. And this evening, our first one, the agenda is for the brush recycling site discussion. So, Eric, are you gonna be leading that one?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Mayor and Board. As you know, you have a memo, we're here tonight to talk really about two topics, but they are intertwined in regards to the Brush and Recycling Center. As you know, we have the Diamond Valley Park Project expansion, and that impacts the current location of the site. So on the screen, on the left, where my cursor is, that is the current recycling center. And then this pile, this area that I'm circling right here is really the brush center. And when you map that out, it's about 4 acres of land. So as you can see correspondingly on the right, that location, the current location, is where we will put the bulk of the expansion at Diamond Valley. So that's a 600 by 600 soccer, football, lacrosse, baseball, multi-purpose complex with road system coming all the way down through and out to Eastman. So that necessitates the need to relocate the brush and recycling center from over here, where staff is proposing to put it, is over on this piece of property over in this area. So this whole square, if you wanna call that a square, whatever that diagram is about 4 acres. That would be where we would relocate it if, and this leads me into my next piece of the topic, if we keep our operations as is and relocate it on this site. Relocating it on this site is going to cost approximately $80,000. And as you recall, when we talked about this CIP project, probably the next phase of Diamond Valley expansion will necessitate the move of the Brush and Recycling Center out of the park. That park at build-out will be our largest park and most used park just based on sheer volume of our rec programming. And as we've talked in the past, recycling and brush just don't fit in an athletic complex. So this is kind of give you the master plan look of what the rest, so kind of everything to this left quadrant of is getting built. And then, so once we break into the center over here, or i.e. cross the Greeley water line, that would necessitate, if we were to move the site over here, we would need to then relocate it somewhere else. So Terry and I have done some research with the help of finance. As you have in your packet was a short little brief on the cost of running the recycling and brush center. So the balance that you can see, and we did last year, there were 8,388 residential loads, or like, for example, a car or a truck that drove in there and dropped something off. This is brush only. Commercial, there were 2,810 loads, but that could be a commercial lawn service, or that could be a commercial semi-tractor trailer that pulls in there, and they vary. We charge them by the load for the residential, and by commercial, it's cubic yard. So we're really not comparing apples to apples when it comes to quantity. Based on staff's opinion, and that was the public works staff that works out there, they feel like the brush pile is about 50-50. So 50% of the maximum of the brush that's brought in is brought by residents. The other 50% is brought by commercial. Even though the sheer volume of traffic, cars and trucks in and out, is highly skewed to the residential side. The commercial people just bring bigger loads. So as you can see on the left-hand side, the revenue, so brush revenue was 52.9. The recycling center brought in 10,300, and we recycled 282 tons of material. The expenditures are also broken out. The biggest cost there is the brush recycling or brush grinding service. So Hagerman grinded, I'm having a hard time reading that far, 19.2 cubic yards. We last year paid $3.18 a yard. Terry's been informed, and feel free to jump in anytime, Terry, that price will go up to at least $5. So the numbers you've seen, I based on $5.
What do they grind it into?
They have a big tub grinder, and so they throw it in.
But is it mulch?
It
Is
grinds
that
it into
the end
mulch.
result mulch?
And then they haul it off
That
and
we
they sell it.
use?
No, they grind it,
They
haul it
charge
off,
us to grind it and then they get to keep it?
and then they sell it.
Yeah, the contract
How
says
does
they
that
get to,
work?
they get to keep half of it. So we do keep some.
Keep
We
some.
do keep some of it. When he says it'll be at least $5, it's probably gonna be over $5. you know.
That they're gonna charge us to grind it?
Yeah,
And what if we stop providing it to them anymore? Are they still gonna need the materials to
well,
do
we've
this?
been out for bid for the grinding, and Hageman beats, everybody else, so he's gonna be the lowest that we have, so, it is what it is.
So based on 2017 numbers, we lost doing that business $26,481. So Terry and I began looking at what are our options, knowing that if we keep the recycling center at Diamond Valley, or we move it somewhere else, the sheer number of people that are continuing to move to Windsor is we're probably going to see an increase in recycling and brush, just in quantities. So that means that 4 acres probably over time grows to another larger size, 4, 5, 6, 8 acres that we would need. So we also started figuring out, well, what is the future cost if we stay in the business and with this new rate that we know is coming. So what we're projecting is, as you can see on the left, if we kept our fees the same and the brush and recycling, it's up to $5 cubic yard, and the same amount of same amount of brush came in, we would lose approximately $61,000. So when he and I are sitting there conversing, it's like, That's a lot of money to lose for the services that we're providing. We should come up with some different options. So that's what we wanted to talk to you tonight about. So option number one was keep it the same, don't change any of our business model in any form, lose $61,000. Option two was no change in service, i.e. continue to take the residence brush, continue to take commercial brush, double our fees. And I can tell you on the commercial side for sure, we looked at Hagerman, we looked at the landfill. If you were to haul your stuff over there, you're paying, and so is the contractor, exponentially more than even us doubling our fees. They're paying even more than that. So we're really supplementing, especially on the commercial side, we're supplementing their business by not having them go somewhere else and pay higher rates. But if we, in this example, if we were to double our fees, have the same amount of people show up, we're ballparking it, but we would lose approximately $24,000.
It's basically what we're paying right now
That's
for
correct,
our
but that would
personnel.
be, and remember, last year, February, you raised your fees from $2 to $3, and from, yeah, so you basically raised everybody $1, and we still lost a lot of money.
And I got the nastiest phone call ever. Worse than any fracking phone call. That
Over
dude
that
was
dollar?
pissed.
Yeah.
Boy, he was mad.
Yeah.
Here's a 5.
I think I offered that by the end.
And you offered to pay the dollar for it.
So then option three, eliminating all brush, so that's residential and commercial, which means we would only be in the business of the recycling piece. That would mean we would lose approximately $12,000. For us on the staff side, our recommendation is option three. I realize that that's a difficult decision for all of you, but one, it's about money in our eyes, as well as we lack space. Wherever we were to put it, we don't have more than 4 acres somewhere to put the brush and recycling center as we sit today. It might mean acquiring some other property, putting it somewhere else that we haven't come up with yet. So then we moved over to option 4, which we thought about, well, what if we just got rid of the commercial brush, which means we would cut the scale of the brush pile down approximately in half, and only deal with residents, which that might be a little more palatable, is just providing that same service, but only to residents. That would result in a $30,000 loss. Again, the Hagerman would still have to come in, we'd still pay them $5+. We're basing it on what the residents, we're basically gonna cut that 19 cubic yards in half. And then option 5 was the eliminating the brush for the commercial brush recycling for commercial folks only, but doubling the residential fees. That cuts the loss down to $16,000. Again, the reason to double the fees is we're running a piece of a business, and so we're really giving up the employee wages, but we're having the residents pay for the grinding and removal of the brush. So that's kind of where we're at with.
Go back to
Sure.
2, or it's 1 or 2. maybe.
Second slide, you mean?
Yeah, well, the options.
Oh, options.
Because I think this is an important service on both ends that we have to continue. We're a growing community, and I think, I think it's helpful. I look at it as it's one of our green initiatives that we have.
Yes.
I think it allows folks to maybe better take care and maintain than they would if they knew they had to go clear to Fort Collins or Greeley to have something local. And if we have to figure it out now, I think we have to figure it out now. And as somebody who goes out there, I would pay double or even triple to have that kind of local. Obviously, I don't want poor Miles to get even a meaner phone call, but I think it's an important service that we offer on both spectrums. And so I'm in favor of looking at and figuring out a long-term solution. I mean, maybe we have to have a short-term for right now, but there has to be a long-term range behind it.
I agree, 'cause I love, this is one of my favorite services the town offers, but I don't think we should be subsidizing commercial. So is there an option 6 where the commercial play some sort of market rate, and
Yeah, we could,
I'm okay subsidizing, because we don't want this stuff in the landfill, that's, I mean, you guys probably know that's, I assume that's much worse than.
Well, the other problem though is a lot of the trash places aren't gonna take all your,
So
I trimmed up
we're
one of my
gonna-
trees and I had big, you know, pieces that, and they
So
won't even take
people are
that.
gonna have more junk in their yard.
You bury the trash on top.
Right, you hide it.
If it's too tall though, they won't pick it up. If the branches stick out too far.
Yeah, kind of,
It's your trash company, mine will take everything.
but they should, I mean.
so to
I didn't interrupt.
to answer your question, yes, we could charge a market rate.
I like that idea.
The other thing that goes along with this, and staff has this problem, my staff deals with it, because of the location, Terry's staff deals with it, when they have to come in and clean it up, is we have a lot of hours where it's not gated, and people just show up and just drop stuff off, so they'll drop. So, like the recycling center, we don't, it's open 24 hours a day, so you could, for example, I'll just say Christmas tree. If you showed up and the brush site center was closed, there are people that just pitch it in, and so then that requires staff to go get it, it requires staff time. So when we move it, no matter where we move it, we need to do a better job of, when it's open, but when it's closed, it's closed off.
And can we set up finding system if we find that
You'd
people
have to
would-
set up a security.
Surveillance camera.
Cameras.
Because that does create a burden for both of our residents.
I second Christie, I think, and I know this sounds crazy, but the option 6, like maybe we're talking about, I only use it once a year. So for me to load up a whole pickup truck, being a resident, I'm out with my water bill, or I have my permit, or whatever, if I had to pay $10 to take it out there, know it's gonna be recycled, it's gonna benefit Windsor, I don't have to deal with my trash service, because if you do have a heavy trash can, or have extra trash, you're gonna get penalized by your trash company in most
Exactly.
cases too. So it's damned if you do, I mean,
We don't have dangerous chemicals going out.
that's right, so.
Wherever, maybe?
But I will tell you, because I've talked to, what's his name that mans the hut out there, you know, he always wants to start up a conversation with you every time you're out there.
Small bills only.
What, yeah?
Small bills only.
Your hundreds are gonna get out there.
No.
I don't know what you're doing out there other than, in talking to him, he's made it pretty clear though that, because you're right, the commercial, they show up with a big pile of stuff.
And the thing with commercial is, you don't know what's in those trucks.
Right.
I mean, and what has driven the cost up is all the debris and stuff, when Hagerman comes in to grind, you know, a shot put ruined his, grinding, so we had to help pay for the cost to fix his grinder on that, and so you just don't know what's in all that stuff. And I think that's what's driven the cost up.
Well, and on the commercial side too, most of the guys that go out to our site out there on a commercial basis are probably doing jobs in and around Windsor, where that's their closest, but I also, in talking to, what's his name out there, and the guy, because a few years ago, I hired a guy to come out and hack a few trees down and everything else, and I went out there with him, and he was like, no, he pays the commercial rate, I don't care if he's with you and you're a resident or not, but my point is, he made it very clear that for them to take it all the way up to Waste Management, all through
Yeah.
14,
Yeah.
or to Fort Collins, it was like $100 to go drop their load at those places. So to even double or triple even the commercial side, or, you know, I still think if it's lower than what the competitors would be, it could be the way to offset the residential rates.
I like Miles's idea of raising the, commercial so that at least if they're paying their way,
To a market.
no matter what.
I still think
costs.
they'll continue to use it. I mean, whether that's the idea or not, I think they will, because it's still cheaper than the alternatives for them.
And if they don't, it cuts our cost down.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's like the rec center, when you cost recovery,
Mm-hmm.
should at least be 100% for commercial entity, I think.
But even that 16,000 being left over, you know, it was double the residential and do away with commercial, or, I mean, if we were to add another 1/3 and triple the rates from where they are now or something, at least it could be explained as that this is the true cost for this to be operated, you only had to come 2 miles down the road from your house to,
Right.
you know, dump this stuff versus driving it, you know, and
Yeah.
having to pay more too,
And I
so.
wanna bring up, we're just now having this conversation because of, you know, everything else that's went on this year, but I don't know whether permits have been issued for this year, but we're, you know, before any of those permits can be issued, we're gonna have to, you know, decide what the costs are gonna be.
Well, and maybe this brings up even the bigger question, which is, if there is no place out of Diamond Valley for this, and it's the wishes of the board to maintain this service, then maybe we don't move it to that trapezoidal place, maybe there's another place it could be transferred to now and have it not have to have a second or a,
Twice.
I don't know, I'm thinking
Yeah, that
outside the
was-
box to
that was
Well,
say.
what
one of my
about
points.
Public Works?
We've talked
Don't we
about
have lots
that.
of, don't we own lots of space out there? at
There's a
Public Works?
triangle behind Public Works there that we were gonna use to dump snow into. But that could be used for, brush recycling. We'd have to figure out someplace else to dump snow, when we have to haul snow. But
How many, is that enough acreage, what you got?
Yeah, we were just doing some math, I think there's about 4 acres that's available back in that back western corner.
Along the railroad tracks? or you
Along
talking
the
about-
railroad tracks and the far, the property kind of comes with a triangle in the back.
we're not gonna wanna get too close to the farmer's ditch or anything,
Right.
because that's gonna create problems, but,
So you could put it there.
Now,
Okay.
Gary, you said that there's 4 acres available, but you talked about the possibility of growing 5, 6, or 7 acres.
The issue would be, we're 30,000 people and we're at 4 acres. If we're at 60,000 people, does that mean, and I don't know, I'm speculating, does that mean we need 8 acres, double it, or 10? We eventually will get some property to the north, that Takankala Park property, but when that occurs, that could be a long time from now. So
Well,
if we were to expand in that location, so I think it works now, 10 years from now, is it big enough? I don't know, it's based on population demand.
maybe what I was trying, sorry,
Go
Terry.
ahead.
What I was trying to say a little while ago too, was that one of the things I think that we as a town have to do is set a good example. It kind of goes back to what Christie was saying. You know, if we say no, what are we doing as a town? And if we say, we're gonna raise the price to clear out of sight, what does that say to people? And I just think we have to keep that in mind, that we have to set a good example, just like we do with water conservation and with this kind of conservation. But boy, I lived in Longmont when they did the Erie one, and that was a headache. I mean, everybody was using the Erie waste site. And moving out there, if you feel there's room, then that's probably a good edge. But I just wanted to mention that 5, 6, 7, or 8, or 10.
I was gonna say, one of the
I'm
other
sorry, Terry, I
things,
didn't mean to.
Yeah, so one of the other concerns I have with having them out there is having a privacy fence up so people can't see what we have in our yard and everything, because I don't want having people climbing over a fence to get in public works facility there. You know, we do have cameras up and stuff, but
and to the point, I think
You're right.
that's a great point, because you also, because we would have that, if we did an access road along the railroad tracks there, we could then put a gate out front when we're closed.
Yeah.
And not have it free-for-all like what
I
we
had a
sometimes
question
have.
about access to it and also wind.
we could have a gate out there with the hours on it and days that we're
But
open.
we would have to put an access road in.
You know, we have one now.
It might need to be
To that
improved a
point.
little.
Yeah,
That's the
it's
road they're gonna use.
difficult, right?
There's no-
Commercial trucks can run it, you know.
Yeah.
And, any concerns about wind blowing debris into the neighborhoods?
The wind blows a little more out there than
Right,
it
it
does
Yeah,
everywhere else, so, you
so
know.
a privacy
Except the
fence
golf
might help
course.
that, yeah.
Um,
Or net in.
And people driving out there, they might not think it's near as convenient as where we have it located now, but it's the only other place that we
But
own.
at least
It's
we're
more
making the
convenient to
offer.
Walton than Fort Collins.
And what we could do in the future too is, we could maybe eventually eliminate commercial. To me, it's more important that we really have a place for our residents,
Yes.
number one, first and foremost. I think right now, we're accommodating commercial as long as they can pay for themselves,
Right.
right? But maybe at some point as we grow that into where we no longer service commercial, and who knows what Larimer County is gonna end up doing
Good point.
with their landfill issue, and maybe it's where they're gonna land, and that will be the option that.
And there may be
commercial
things that
wants to
they don't accept, because they're trying, Larimer County's trying to do all green stuff, and we want, you know, the people to separate their, I'm just saying they may not want brush and stuff like that.
And they've raised their fees accordingly, so
Right,
it does cost a lot to take, we haul our sweepings and stuff out there, you know, to the landfill, and we pay well for it.
well, the other thought that came to my mind is could the master plan for Diamond Valley keep it out there and allow a little bit more acreage, another acre or two?
The only way that I think it fits, and
That solves the issue out by Public Works, it
No,
keeps it in the area where it's at.
The only way I think it fits is if we were to acquire this property
Right.
that we've talked about in the past.
How many
Which,
acres was that?
That's 7.
But you have to buy the house.
Get by the house.
Right.
Right.
Well, as it stands today, but if we were to move it there, that could be a potential expansion
In the,
conversation, if you still even want that kind of thing. I think the thing is, if this is gonna be our biggest park, do we really want a brush and
I
recycling
agree.
place there at someday, like the biggest?
Well, my only other question is, could we do, even though we're growing and we might be working with a smaller piece of land, can we have Hagerman come out more often so that the 4 acres still works? I mean, I don't know what those dynamics are and like when we make the phone call and they come out, or is it?
He might be willing to, he might not. You know, he's located at Prospect, right off I-25. So,
Oh,
and he handles the recycling and everything already, but that's a little further for people to go than right here in Windsor, but,
But if it meant we could have this in a you know, maybe it is worth us
the
paying him a little, I don't know, I don't know, I'm trying to
The
think of
summertime, he's real busy, so when we first hired him, he wanted to come in the fall, and that's when we have him come. You know, we've had all the Christmas trees brought in after he does the grinding, but it is what it is.
So he comes once a year, basically?
Mhm.
yeah, that pile gets really high.
Yeah.
It's not cost effective to haul that big tub grinder and stuff over here, and all the trucks to do it twice a year.
so this is staying where it's at for this summer, but it
It's-
has to be moved by next summer, or what's the time, or it
No.
has to be moved like
So
this summer?
We're probably gonna get an RFP out for a design build for that within 30 days or so. So we're probably looking at mid-summer,
To want it moved?
To moving it,
ideally.
because the big piece that we need to get in the ground is this square, the sports field. That grass needs to be in before fall so we can rest and grow all winter, so that when we're ready to open spring, summer of next year, that the grass is rooted and it's in and won't just get torn up by the use.
So if this board were to make a decision that we want to move forward and we want it in the new location,
Mhm.
is that even possible to do this summer, or is there too much grading or components that have to take place? I mean, does it still mean we have to go here temporarily and look at Public Works as a future?
I think we could move it. We'd have to work out, Terry and I'd have to work out the timing of getting that road ready and the prepping the site and getting the fencing. Basically, what we do is build that site, get it ready, and then we have to the timing of when we wanna make the switch and shut that one off. And send
What's
it
the
in.
cost of moving the site, whether you move it?
It was, we had estimated about $80,000
To
to
move
move
it?
it on that site.
It's gonna be more,
So it's
obviously.
probably a little more out there, but I'm guessing because of the road.
Does that mean we're literally taking everything that would wait till the fall to get ground up and moving it?
Or we could move it on
Yeah.
this site, we could
We
push
could
it,
move it on
we
this
could
side.
move it into the open space to the east and then have them come around,
Until they come.
which is not a big deal.
Well,
Dennis.
Terry and Eric
Oh.
and Dennis, you guys have put the pluses and minuses to this, haven't you? And I'm hearing that you're thinking it'd be a better move to behind the Public Works.
Well, I think, you know, because of the size of the field, complex that he's gonna have there, and moving it twice doesn't make economic sense.
Right.
So, if we could move it once, that'd be great. Now, I don't think there's any money in the budget this year to do
We
that.
hadn't even had the initial 85 in the budget, is that what you're saying?
No, actually, it's, that 80,000 is in the, we were going to pay for that out of the park
Okay.
fund.
Oh, so we have 80,000 allocated. And I know Dennis, you wanted to chime in or had something to say.
Yeah, I want to bring something up, and that is moving it up to the Public Works property and coming off of the County Road 15 right there and driving parallel with the railroad, I don't think is a good idea because you don't have proper access there. You know, when we built the Public Works facility, we built a turn lane. It's not a good idea to have cars turning right, turning left just after the railroad tracks, and then coming out, they don't have an accel lane. To make a left, if they're waiting for somebody, oncoming car, they're basically sitting on the tracks. That really wasn't intended to be a full-blown access.
No, it's a temporary
It's a
access.
ditch right in the road for once, every 2 weeks or something, but not for the general public to be going in and out.
Can we cut through the parking lot?
You
Or
could come off
cut-
the main
Come off the main
access.
road access? I don't know.
But not right by the
Okay.
tracks.
So,
We'd have to look at that.
Well, is there
if
any
we only,
poss-
I'm
if we only
sorry.
have 4 acres out there, why not just move it to the 4 acres here?
We can, the long-term thing is we'll have to move it again. When I say long-term, if we continue to grow and the demand grows, we could be talking about.
Why do you have to
2
move it
years later.
again from here? Are you gonna put something else in that spot?
Well, it would sit right here, and I can tell you that I already get complaints about smell, from the recycling, as well as the brush pile sits there all summer long, and that stuff just bakes ferments basically. And it smells, and so when you start filling these fields with people,
Well, not to mention, you're gonna need space for the park maintenance.
yeah, well, and different discussion, but this site, and I'm working on a memo in regards to location of the park maintenance facility. No matter where it ends up, this site will be so big, it's going to need its own maintenance facility just for that site alone. And I can tell you that I'm working on that memo. My recommendation will be, for a variety of reasons, I'll give you those details later, but this is where I think we should put our future parks maintenance location, because that site's gonna need one anyway. And we don't have another place for it to go that we currently own.
No, we don't have the room out. I mean, we didn't even build what we needed out there. And
Right.
if we get it to where we need it, then there's not gonna be any room for parking.
Terry and I walked the site.
So there's no other configuration but that triangle piece?
What about our newly acquired piece down at Crossroads and 257?
There's no,
Or on the way to the sewer treatment plant or something like that? Is there any land down there that would be?
the only buildable piece there that I remember, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, is the location for the fire department. That's it.
Well, they're not taking all that chunk.
Well, the rest of that land is all floodplain.
But there's just room for the fire.
There's only room for like one little,
You can't have a brush recycling in a floodplain? Karen?
no, for example, for
Well,
example,
that's what I'm.
It goes into the woods.
this site right here, this
Oh,
open
wow.
space, right here on this,
Includes the water.
that is the same thing.
Right.
That is for stormwater retention, so that's why we can't put it there.
Is there any possibility of being able to acquire maybe some additional land to the north of the Public Works facility? If that needs to grow down the road?
That's for a future park.
That will be a future park, which we could carve out a piece there, but that was what I was referring to, is we don't know when we're gonna get that. So we could grow into that, yes, absolutely. If we went to
Okay.
Public Works now, we could grow to the north. We would just have to remember that when we acquire that land, when it's deeded to us, that a portion of that back corner goes to the brush and recycling.
You know, and we need more land, and because when we get the big snowstorms, we run out of places to put snow. So we're putting it in parking lots.
Right.
And, you know, that's not good for the parking lots or anything, so, you know, we've had ground, or in the past that was sold, that we should have probably held on to. But anytime we can get ground cheap enough, we need to get it.
Well, maybe revisiting that southeast corner is an option that would,
Except again, I'm gonna say, if you build a multi-million dollar baseball and recreation field, do you want, even in the corner there someday, to be a brush recycling center?
Definitely
I'm not sure it's that nice. You know, to me, it's a natural fit in public works if we could make it work out there somehow. And I don't know if maybe you guys could figure out and look at the road access and see if there isn't a workaround somewhere, somehow, if that's really our best, because I agree with you, it doesn't make sense to move it twice if we know we're gonna have it this year and then move it again next year, another $80,000, I mean.
And the public works side is a lot more secure than here. It just,
Terry, are you
Defensive.
looking at the appearance of the public works, you know, having it behind?
Yeah, I'd want it behind, I don't wanna take it.
Well, I'm not, I'm just saying, have you looked at that as a appearance thing, you know, just like we're talking about the parks? And I agree with what's been said about the park, because it's gonna be a beautiful area someday when we have it all done. But I'm just wondering if the Public Works building, having that back there with a fenced-in area
We'd have to kind of hide it as best we could.
with some
We have to
landscaping.
get creative.
we can prove it up.
Right, pretty it up.
And I know you've discussed that, that's the pluses and minuses.
it doesn't eat,
that I was
that
talking
doesn't
about.
eat into land if you did another 6 bays of heated storage back there, does it?
No, it's where we have the property there, we
I just wanted to make sure that we're not,
You're good.
I mean, it almost seems like, I mean, it's fairly far from neighborhood. I mean, it's not like it's right next to a neighborhood or anything.
Yeah.
So it's kind of out of sight,
What about
out of
trucks?
mind, so, I don't know,
See what we can do.
Okay.
but maybe I would go and say, see what you can do to explore that option before we, because the town does not own any other property, is what you're telling me.
But we couldn't.
The only other property you mentioned to me that I hadn't thought about was the Kiger location. And that is open space, we have a $2 million pump house there that you don't want.
Yeah.
I mean, we would get into access issues,
Right.
that's just
Oh,
that's really the only piece of property.
Well, we got Eastman Park, but I don't think Martin would like that going across.
I would
the-
say
Well, I don't think
I'd
you'd
say
want
down
the
at
Kiger
Crossroads, but-
No, we
to be
wouldn't,
made into a.
I'm just saying to answer
We've just
Mayor's
thought about
question,
all the
what property
areas
we
we
own,
can
that's
own.
it.
Do we own everything there by the community garden?
We own that whole triangle, yes.
floodplain
well, that's
again.
that's a floodplain.
And that's
Would
floodplain.
it
Oh, that's a
work? Would it
floodplain
work?
again?
No?
Yeah.
No.
And it has a master plan. for
No,
that.
you don't wanna put that stuff.
Yeah,
in
that's
the
a bad
floodplain.
spot.
So it sounds like that's our best option,
Yeah.
long-term. And then also option 6,
Yes.
was it? Increasing residents,
So
some,
Some,
and increasing commercial, still below market.
At market.
Or at market.
at whatever it costs us.
Because it's still saving them time, isn't it? If they're here in town, then,
Yeah.
like you pointed out, instead of driving an hour.
Well, we'll look at the Public Works site and we'll see if we can find another access. We had a temporary access along the ditch clear to the north when we were building the facility.
come on that way.
Oh.
But, you know, I'm not sure the ditch company will let us have a permanent access along there.
Yeah.
So do we need to offer it at all to commercial? That's what I keep going back to.
Good question.
Cause if it was only residential use, gotta have a water bill, gotta have a permit,
Cuts down the
something like
volume.
that. It cuts down on the volume and maybe a 4-acre site is all we
Yeah.
need and
I'd be open.
the stink's not as bad, cause the pile's
And
not as
that's-
big.
That's kind of what I was saying with Hageman only being a prospect in I-25. They really don't have to travel all that far anyway, so.
We would have more control of what's going in there too,
Mhm.
probably.
Very much.
I like it.
I guess my question is, how many of the businesses are Windsor-based, you know, the commercial users are Windsor-based businesses? Are they paying any sort of tax revenue off what they're doing that leads to that?
There's a lot of lawn services that do work in Windsor that utilize that site.
Does a lawn service pay sales tax?
You know, so
Not
good.
sales tax, it's a
Have
service.
have we done any studies, Terry, on how many you might.
Yeah, that was
I didn't
the-
see it.
So 8,300 residents,
8,300.
2,800
Okay, well, I knew you said 8,300 residents
Mhm.
Right.
and.
2,800 commercial.
2,800.
Well, I do think Dennis brings up a good point, and I think we need to be cognizant of getting, exit in and out. But however, it's not that kind of place where you got 10 people all at one time usually going. It's usually, a carload, they come and go, so,
And we really need to get rolling on this because spring's around the corner.
yep.
And people need to be advised of what's gonna happen there and the cost, and then we gotta hand out permits,
Yep.
so.
We'll distribute permits, and if we, the nice thing about this, and depending on how the town board decides to move forward, if you eliminate the commercial, then we can just send permits in all the water bills, and then it's kind of a done. The people who need the permits will have them, and, that way, it kind of eliminates some of that administrative side of it that we've had to monitor.
And not to complicate things, but just food for thought, if, let's say there was a local business here, I'm Paul's Mowing Service, I live here, I could take my personal stuff out there, but I have grass clippings, cause I mow yards all day long or something. Could there be any kind of elevated fee for a local resident that's got a local business? Cause in talking to what's his name that works out there, there's places that come from the local municipalities, cause it's cheaper to bring it here than it is to even take it 2 miles down the road to their nearest spot. So there would still be a quantity we would be eliminating while not upsetting local business, I guess is what I'm getting at, or,
We'd have to
Not trying
decide
to
what
con-
material we would take and what material we wouldn't.
Right. Well, how soon can you have some kind of information back to us as to whether that site, we can make that site work and have a road that will,
We can get together and get working
Okay.
on it and get it back quick.
Maybe
so we
we
can
talk
help
about
you
it
make
on
a
March,
decision?
March 5th.
put it on for March 5th, and that way, if decisions get made, we can get it on the March 12th
Okay.
agenda, and then we can work on mailers and all of those pieces.
Just to clarify, so we're talking about move the public works site potentially, double the rate of residential. If you wanna eliminate commercial,
Eliminate commercial.
what kind of rate are you talking?
I wouldn't support doubling the residential, I think.
Okay.
I would eliminate commercial or raise commercial enough to subsidize residential. That would be my opinion.
But when we talk about doubling residential, what is that, from $3 to $6?
Yeah, I still think it's a bargain. I would be for doubling it. I mean, you're gonna have to pay if you want this service. I mean, because even if you use your local trash folks for recycling these days, they've raised their rates for you to be able to do that too.
But the
considerably.
recycling isn't what people are paying for. That they can
That's
just
free.
drop off for free.
This is brush.
That is just brush.
Which people aren't doing massive yard work every single weekend to the point where they have a
No,
pickup truck
usually-
full every single weekend, it's
I would
probably.
bet
Once
the
a
average
year.
resident.
So to raise it from
does
3 to
once
6 or
twice a
9
year.
bucks for that once or twice a year that you,
Yeah. I don't think it produces a hardship on anybody that they can't go out there. Or maybe we can have a special scholarship fund.
but I agree with these guys where it shouldn't be a loss to the town either. And
Right.
that's what we've talked
But
about.
it's
and-
bigger than just the money. I mean, if you make it too high, people won't recycle the brush. It goes in the trash can. Trash goes on top of it and it goes to the dumps. I mean,
Left on the street, left in
Yeah.
the yards and.
What if we made it a nice $5, I don't wanna say even, but,
round
Yeah, but
number.
don't we
you
need
know,
that?
an easy $5 bill
But even with
payment
that
instead
number
of
of
6.
doubling it, we're still gonna be losing or barely breaking even.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well-
doubling residential fees, net loss of $16,000.
Yeah.
That's why I say it really needs to triple, basically. I'm just saying,
I
if
think
you-
Like
so too.
$10
I don't
maybe?
think $6 is,
No, and it's,
A lot
I'm
to
okay
ask.
if we subsidize, it's a good service for our community, for our residents. I'm okay if we have to spend a few $1,000s extra each year on that. But I would support doubling it. I don't think 6 is gonna hurt anybody, and I would be in favor of eliminating commercial. 'Cause that
let's
cuts
make
down
a
the
final
volume.
decision on commercial maybe when we.
That cuts down the volume
Business out
and
there.
also cuts down the truck traffic on our access road.
Okay.
what's that?
Start a business out in the industrial park where people can take it.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Maybe somebody's
Opportunity.
watching.
We'll get
Business
working on that.
opportunity.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Industrial park.
Have it ready.
Okay, Harmony Road update.
Okay, so I'll just run through what's going on in Windsor's 2-mile segment of the Harmony Road corridor. Wanted to throw this on because we've got a lot of moving parts up there and want to make sure the town board's aware of everything that's going on. So this is County Line Road, Highway 257. So Harmony West is in Timnath, Harmony East is in Severance, and these are our 2 miles of the corridor. We're furthest along with the the Ridge at Harmony Road second filing, which is essentially this quarter section right here. Planning Commission has already approved the preliminary, and you'll probably be seeing that in the next month to 2 months for final approval.
Is that mixed use on that corner, Scott, do you know? Or?
It's residential to the north half of that, and I believe there may be some mixed use or some, a limited amount of multifamily in that area. They do have the pond on the corner, and then they've got a lift station, and they've got some commercial more at the half mile, but a limited amount. So this will be coming before you in the next month and a half for final approval. The design of Harmony Road for this half mile includes the landscaped median that replicates what Timnath has done further to the west. You may recall we talked about that at a work session last July, decided that this is a gateway corridor. We want to replicate that Timnath section through Windsor's 2-mile stretch. So in order to accommodate that, staff has also been working with the property owner on the south side of the road to acquire adequate right-of-way on the south side of the road to accommodate the landscape median. I've actually got Northern Engineering working on exhibits to attach to the right-of-way acquisition agreement, and I'm hoping we'll have those pretty soon. But the property owner seems amenable so far to dedicating the additional right-of-way. We'll have to probably work with them on some irrigation improvements and some fencing that will need to be relocated in order to accommodate the right-of-way. But we've pretty much got the access points. We know where they're at, and we know how they're gonna look. Everything's designed. The third filing just recently came in, and that's just getting underway. Staff is performing the initial review. Hasn't been to Planning Commission yet, but I would imagine sometime mid to late, or midsummer, fall, it'll be going to Planning Commission for preliminary and/or recommendation to town board. So with that, they'll be designing the other half of Harmony Road to County Road 15. And we've had one conversation with this property owner on the south side, similar to what we've done over here. We just haven't gotten as far along with them because the urgency isn't until we get third filing approved, this one isn't quite as urgent. Jeff Mark and I guess the Landis team wants to be under construction of this half mile yet this year. So as soon as
Scott, what did we read recently about Timnath bringing their widening project out to 13 and putting in the light right there?
Yeah, so that's a good segue. The Rocky Mountain Sports Park referral that went out to Severance and Timnath and other jurisdictions, we received a letter back from Timnath that indicated that they would like to have some discussions with Windsor's leadership to extend or to help participate with them on the extension of their 4-lane section to County Line Road. The traffic study that was generated by the sports park indicated that it's going to have a fairly significant impact on Harmony Road to the west because all of the traffic is about 90+% of the traffic is coming from out of state and is coming up I-25 through Timnath to the sports park. So, so that's a conversation that we just wanted
the town board to be aware that that request is out there. We did meet with Timnath last week to get a little more clarification, but without additional detail on, that we're waiting on from the sports park. They just wanted us to keep that in mind, that they wanna have that conversation at some point.
And it's Timnath's desire to where Walker Manufacturing is, where it comes back down to 2 lanes right there, that's where they wanna keep it to 4 lanes.
Right.
All the way.
Right. And so, yeah, in that referral letter, they also did point out that they are planning the traffic signal at County Line Road and Harmony this year. So I believe they'll be working with our engineers here to coordinate any design aspects of that. And so they're planning to implement that yet this year. And-
Scott?
Yeah.
Go ahead, finish what you're gonna say there.
That's all right, I was just gonna segue to another.
Well, I think you're probably gonna go to it, so I was gonna talk about Rocky Mountain Sports Park,
Okay.
but, so go ahead.
Okay, so, yeah, and just for your information, the Timnath cross-section, they're acquiring 160 feet of right-of-way, or 140 feet of right-of-way, I believe, for 6 lanes of traffic eventually, whereas we're keeping the rural cross-section, we're actually acquiring 150 feet of right-of-way, but we're only planning for 4 lanes in either direction. So then County Road 15 to Highway 257 is our other mile segment of the Harmony Corridor. You just saw the Swanson annexation that took in this parcel, or that is going to take in this parcel, and also this stretch of existing right-of-way. That brings in the right-of-way as it exists in Weld County today. We'll still need to acquire additional rights-of-way, or the sports park will need to acquire additional rights-of-way to get the cross-section up to the same with the landscape median, and there are some improvements that will be in the right-of-way that we'll need to address in that.
The developers are all paying for the widening of the road, aren't they? The 2 mile stretch of the Windsor, as it's developed, is it?
So the Rigid Harmony Road is designing this segment, will be paying for the south half improvements. I believe the road impact fees would reimburse for any oversizing that the developer does that isn't just serving their property. And we're also going to cover the landscape median, since that is something that's above and beyond what is normal. The sports park, we've given them comments, asking them for the plans, but we're still waiting on that, so.
So, using the Fairgrounds Road model as a point of reference, Loveland and Windsor coordinating the master plan. Where are we with this? We've got 3 communities involved. How are we coordinating the planning?
Well, whereas Fairgrounds is a little different because
Yeah.
Loveland's on one side of the road and we're on
We've
the
got the whole
other.
thing here, right? Yeah.
We're in control of this 2 mile stretch.
Right.
And outside of that 2 miles, Timnath takes care of that, and Severance takes care of beyond that. So, once we've annexed this, once we've acquired the additional right-of-way and it's been annexed, that'll be.
Okay. So there's
However-
really no coordination with the other, for the
The
whole
design.
74
Well,
corridor.
there is a coalition, it's Timnath, Windsor, Severance, Eaton,
Yeah.
Weld County, and CDOT, and
Yeah.
coincidentally, we're having an updated meeting tomorrow night,
Okay.
on what our next steps are to look
And
at
this
this
is leading to
corridor.
my next question. You were talking about the median that Timnath did. Are we matching that? Are we doing?
Yeah, we're reviewing plans that would essentially replicate what they're doing to the west through our 2 mile segment.
And is there a long-term vision as far as where lights would be at? Obviously, we've got one at 15 now. Tim
Yeah.
is talking about putting one at 13.
Yeah, we've got one here is existing, here's existing. This one is later this year by Timnath. And then eventually on the half-mile intersections, there may be signals, but not with the current.
Who, the light at 15 was a CIP project.
Mhm.
the one that's at 257 in Harmony,
That's CDOT.
was it an, it was a C, was that CDOT paid for? Did CDOT pay for that light that was there?
That was a Windsor, Windsor, CDOT and Will County project.
So is Timnath completely paying for that light at County Line?
No, we'll have to pitch in that too.
Right, we have an existing IGA with Timnath that will.
Now, I know this is a technicality, but when we put in a light like that, we split the cost, we come to the agreement on, what about the ongoing maintenance, the electricity, everything else, is that some kind of, is that a proportionate?
I'm not sure we have anything in place that defines that.
Well, who pays for the light to operate?
Currently, the example I'm thinking of is out at Fairgrounds and Crossroads. I believe we talked about the city of Loveland is maintaining that, but we pay our proportionate share for our responsibility at that intersection. I would imagine we'd have to work out a similar situation with Timnath at this, for the new signal here.
Yeah, I'm a real proponent for medians and landscaping. I want to make certain that it's done to our standards, not some other community standards, and we're thinking about long-term maintenance. So, yeah, I don't know where we stand with all that, and that's why I'm asking the questions about,
Sure.
if we're just matching what Timnath does, I don't know if that's exactly what we want.
Well, it's actually.
And maybe it's better, I don't know.
No, that is something that we considered, and they're doing exactly what we had discussed last
Okay.
summer. We want it to be low water usage, low maintenance. I think they said they only go out and have to maintain 2 or 3 times a year. No pop-up spray, anything like that. It's all on a drip,
Okay.
and it's
So it's
considered,
meeting our standards of
Yes.
what we would feel comfortable maintaining and
Right.
aesthetics and so forth, okay.
the maintenance is something that we're gonna have to have conversations with Eric's team, how that is gonna work. But we, if you'll recall, back in July when we had that discussion, Jeff Mark's team was in the design process, and we needed to give them direction
Right.
one way or another, so that,
I do-
because it is a lot more expensive to go in and retrofit
Yeah,
and put it in after the fact.
appreciate
so,
that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And our safe streets or smart streets design that we talked about,
Complete streets?
complete streets,
Yeah.
that's being
It is being
applied as we.
incorporated in the review. There are trails and pedestrian improvements.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I guess going back, so the last segue was to the Severance regional effort. We did budget the $35,000 for Windsor's share of this effort. And just one of the things that we wanted to point out is, as far along as we are with our 2-mile stretch, some of the things in the Severance, the regional plan are things that we're already gonna have done probably in the next year. And so, just from a efficiency standpoint, I'm not sure how much, I think when we spoke with Timnath's staff last week, they indicated that they've provided all of their background information and their plans and studies to the Severance team, but I don't know that they're going to be actively sending staff to all of the meetings and things of that nature. So we may want to gauge how much staff time it takes for that effort, just from the standpoint of we're quite a ways along the way it is, so.
Is there any concern that that may need to be more than 2 lanes in each direction if Timnath is looking at doing 3 lanes?
Well, the closer you get to I-25, the traffic
increases.
exponentially gets higher and higher because you're funneling in all those side roads, and so, you know, we may eventually, years from now, need additional laneage. We will have the right of way in place if they're squeezing 6 lanes into 140 feet, and we've got 150 feet, we may.
Should be good.
So we'd have the right of way if it was necessary.
We may have to go to an urban cross section or
years.
something like that if that's the case, but yeah, I think it would be doable if it comes to that in the future. So with that, I just wanted to let you know how far along we are with that.
That's the drill down version. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Excellent, Scott.
It's hard to watch you give that presentation with that cyclone, so.
I think we already went over future meetings before our meeting, so
Yeah,
I think
we
we
did.
can
We went through everything,
break
so-
and get ready to go upstairs to
Sounds good.